So I've started filming this video about 4 or 5 different times because things just keep changing. If you're just joining the channel, my name is Mark Pensestadler and I am building a Zenith Cruzer airplane kit. And these videos are basically a vlog or an online documentation of my building process. So for the last month, I've been painting the airplane. And of course I start with the small pieces and I work my way up to bigger and bigger pieces. I'm getting mixed results in my paint. Now when I first started painting, I had 2 issues that I am trying to solve. The first issue was getting dust or like grit in the paint. That I've pretty much eliminated. The other issue I've had is orange peel. And that I thought I eliminated and I didn't. So when I first started painting, obviously I practiced on small pieces until where I thought I could spray pretty well. Then I started painting real airplane pieces, and I started with little fairings and things like that, access covers. And I've showed you those before. I can put a few of those pictures up on the screen, but those came out really, really nice. So I thought I had kind of perfected my technique. I had the air pressure set right. I had all the settings on the gun set how I want them. So I painted my elevator. When I painted the elevator, I got orange peel on it. And in the other video I made on painting the elevator, I mentioned that I wasn't completely happy with the results because of that orange peel. Well, after having that elevator sit for a few days, the orange peel pretty much leveled out and went away. Now, if you shine a bright light on the elevator and get your eye real close to it, you can still see a little bit of orange peel. It's not 100% gone, but I'm very happy with the results of my elevator. If my whole airplane looked like my elevator, I'd be more than happy. So after I painted my elevator, I started painting a couple other small pieces. And with those small pieces, I got just amazing results. For example, my spinner. If you look at the spinner, it is just amazing. The paint is perfectly smooth. There's no dust. It looks great. It doesn't need buffed or polished or anything. Even some of the other fairings that I have just really, really came out nice. So I kind of thought that I had eliminated the orange peel and the dust problem. So after I painted those, I painted my vertical stabilizer. And when I painted a vertical stabilizer, it's a bigger surface, again I got orange peel. And I wasn't happy with it, but I kind of thought, not too big of a deal, it'll flow out and level kind of like the elevator did. The problem is, it didn't. And I do have, to me, an excessive amount of orange peel on the vertical stabilizer. Now, let me tell you something right up front so you know where I'm coming from. My standard for myself for painting this airplane is absolute perfection. And that's just my personality, but the problem with having the bar so high is that I cannot reach that bar. I cannot get this as perfect as I want it to be. So I'm striving for perfection, but basically I have to learn to accept maybe a little bit less. So with my vertical stabilizer, I had a few options. I could leave it as is, I could sand it down and repaint it, or I could strip it completely and start over. But I figured on the tail of my airplane, I'm gonna have a big vinyl graphic Blue Angels logo that's gonna cover most of the tail. So I kind of thought, you know what, I'll just leave it as it is and the logo will cover it. And when I paint the rudder and the rest of it, it'll come out perfect and, you know, move on, right? So, let's see, after I painted the vertical stabilizer, I painted a few more, I painted the struts. The primer on the struts went on, you couldn't have asked for a better results, right? I had no orange peel, no dust, it looked amazing. When I painted them with the blue paint, again, I'm very happy with the results. I think the struts look great. So once again, I thought that, hey, I've got everything adjusted right. You know, I'm good to go to paint some bigger parts. I'll have perfect results. So what do? I put the rudder in the paint booth, and at the same time I painted the, it's sitting right here, the right aileron. Once again, I got orange peel all over it. So after a day or so, it did flow out a little bit. And to be honest, it's not that bad. In fact, I had a guy come over that paints cars, and you know, honestly, he said he thought it looked pretty good. But again, you could still see orange peel in the paint. So after the decision was made to strip the parts, I got I'll hold it up here. You can see I bought this aircraft paint stripper, and I'll show you a different part that I did strip. It works great, but before I stripped these parts, the painter I told you about that came over was kind of talking to me about sanding these down with 1500 and 2000 grit paper and then buffing them. And he said that would make them look great, which I agree that will make them look great. The only problem is I'm not sure if I can buff a surface like this that has rivets sticking up. You know, I'm not sure when I go over that with a buffer if it's gonna burn the paint off the top of the rivets or not. But I did spend today sanding down this aileron with 1200 grit paper. I ordered 1500 and 2000 grit, which I'll use on this. It'll get here tomorrow. But I'll sand this down up to 2000 grit to remove the orange peel, and then I'll buy a buffer and the pad and the fluid or whatever it needs to use. And I'm gonna buff it out and see if that works. If it does, great, it saves me from repainting it. If it doesn't work, then I will either strip it and repaint it or just sand it down and put another coat on top once I do learn how to spray perfectly. Now, when I say I need to learn how to spray perfectly, here's what I mean. When I spray small parts like the spinner and the fairings and things like that, the paint comes out amazing. But it's the small parts where you go over with the paint gun and the paint, or the gun only passes over the part for like a second at a time. For example, here is my tail fairing. And if you guys can kind of see in the screen, it looks amazing. I mean, look at the shine on there, how smooth the paint is. It really looks nice. And all the parts like this, the fairings and spinner and small fairings, look great. But when I paint a bigger surface like the rudder or the stabilizer or an aileron or something like that, where the gun continuously sprays paint over it, I just can't get it nice. I get the orange peel in there. The problem is there's just so many adjustments. There's air pressure on the wall, there's air pressure at the gun, there's the fan setting, the needle settings, how far away from the surface you hold the paint gun, how fast or how slow you move the paint gun. There's so many variables that, because I can get the paint so nice on these small parts, I don't think it's a problem with the pressure or the atomization of the paint or anything else. I really think it's just technique, which is user error. So I need to figure out how I can spray these bigger parts. I need to figure out the technique I can use to get a nice finish. And like I said, I'm not going to paint any more airplane parts until I have that technique. All right, there's one other issue I want to tell you about, and that is when I primed these ailerons. Now, if you guys are building a Zenith, you know these are flaperons, but I call the outboard sections ailerons. So I primed the two ailerons, and the one here on the screen, you can see the blue one. Let me move this a little bit. This is the one I just talked about where it's scuffed up, and I'm gonna try to polish it. The other one here that you can see doesn't have any primer on it anymore. Something happened with the primer on that aileron. Now, when I did prime these, I primed them when I was getting orange peel still. So I got orange peel on these ailerons, and what I did on the primer was I sanded the primer down to get it smooth so that I could, put the blue paint on. Sanding it down worked great. It completely gets rid of the orange peel. But on this aileron here, I sanded in one spot on the leading edge, I sanded a little bit too far and got down to the bare aluminum, which isn't too big of a deal. I just spray a little bit more primer on it and, smooth it out, and it's good to go. So that's what I did. I finished sanding the rest of the aileron, and then I cleaned it with alcohol to get it ready to spray again. And I was blowing it off with my air hose, and that air got under the primer and just lifted it right up, which it shouldn't do because, this primer sticks like crazy to this aluminum, but for some reason it wasn't sticking to this one. So I wanted to see how much wasn't sticking, so I went down most of the leading edge with the air, and as you can see here, I'll put a video or a picture up on the screen. It just took the paint right off, or the primer. So obviously that's no bueno. So that one needed completely stripped, and I did that today. I used this aircraft stripper that I just showed you, but it is now It's completely stripped. It's kind of a lot of work. There's a lot of scraping, but it does take it off perfectly. I didn't strip the plastic tip because I was afraid that stripper would eat the plastic, but as far as the aluminum goes, it does a really nice job of taking it off. You just have to be patient and do a lot of scraping with it. So this is ready now for a new coat of primer, and then obviously it'll be ready for paint, but I'm not going to paint again until I guess master my technique. All right, so that's an update of where I'm at on painting this airplane. What I'm going to do, my next step is to finish sanding this aileron with a 1500 and then a 2000 grit paper. Then I'm going to buff it. If that works, I will sand down the rudder and the vertical stabilizer and do the same thing, and these will be done and ready to go. If that doesn't work, then I will either strip all 3 of these parts or just sand them down enough to spray another coat. But since I'm not painting right now and I want to spend some time practicing on some large scrap pieces of aluminum, I've been putting off working on my doors, so I can start working on the doors. I can get the cowling put on the airplane. I can fit the wheel pants. There's just a whole bunch of little things that need done yet on the airplane, so I'll use my time during the day finishing up these tasks on the airplane while I can maybe practice at the same time painting. Hopefully, you know, I'll let this airplane sit here for 10 years if I have to, but I cannot keep painting the airplane and getting these bad results with the orange peel. So that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're interested in you know, the progress of this airplane here. I put out videos as much as I can. If you're interested in the doors, I know some of you guys have been asking me when I'm going to put out part 3, I think it is, of the doors. So tomorrow, actually, I'm going to start working on the right side door and look for a video coming out soon. Guys, I'd really appreciate it if you would hit the thumbs up button or the thumbs down. I don't really care. Either one, it does help my channel grow, and I appreciate that. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you again on the next video.